All right, guys, black is here. And what I want to talk about in this video is this. First of all, like this video if you like the video. If you don't like the video, like the video. Got nothing else to do. What I want to talk about is this. All right, when I was 14, my mom bought a used 1982 Cadillac DeVille. I think it was called Sedan DeVille back then. Anywho, it was a front engine rear wheel drive. It wasn't a front wheel drive one. It had a 4.1 liter overhead valve, all aluminum V8. This thing made a sorry ass 125 horsepower. I think it had 200 pound-feet of torque. This car ran on gas, but if you drove it like a diesel, the power seemed adequate, okay? If you just thought about it as a quiet diesel, the car seemed adequate. Anywho, there was this thing I used to do. I couldn't, the air filter looked like it had a carburetor. So it had the air filter box that you take the little net off the top and you take the lid off. Well, in the old days, you could flip the lid over and put the net back on top. When you floor the throttle, you would hear the engine sucking in air. Well, I couldn't do that on that car because the bolt wasn't long enough. So what I did was I took the lid and I would lift the front of the lid and I would stick a bolt in there. So the lid was up maybe that far. And when you floor the throttle, you could hear the engine sucking in the air, right? Well, the engine made the same amount of power, whether the lid was closed like it's supposed to be or open. It made the same amount of power, okay? But the reason I'm making this video is this. Think about this for a second. In 1982, that 4.1 V8 made 125 horsepower. By the way, don't correct me telling me it had 135. It did not have 135. The 82 DeVille had 125, all right? The later ones might have made 135, but the 82, it made 125. But anyway, my 2004 Chevrolet Trailblazer has a 4.2 inline six. That damn thing makes 150 horsepower more. Makes 275 horsepower. 150 horsepower more than my mom Cadillac is what I'm getting at. That's a hell of a difference, right? But yet it breathes through an air filter. It breathes through single exhaust. It does not have headers, but it's making 150 horsepower more than that 4.1 V8. You get what I'm saying? Now, let's go up a little bit. I have a 2007 Mercedes C350. This is the small Mercedes. It's got a 3.5, 24 valve V6 that makes 268 horsepower. The hell of a difference between that 125 my mom Cadillac, right? This is one of the air filters in that Mercedes. It actually has two of these air filters. Two of them. Now, I said I was going to make a video where I plug, okay, on the Mercedes, it's got the air filter box, it's got two inlets. One for each filter. I said I was going to block off first of all, I was going to do 0 to 60, and then I was going to block off one of the filters, so only one of them would get air, and then do 0 to 60. Because I honestly believe it only needs one air filter to make the 268 horsepower. And I know for a fact it only needs one to make 268 horsepower. So how do I know this? You know what this air filter is for? This is for my F-150. This is for my F-150. And notice, it is probably smaller than those two filters together. It's probably smaller. But yet, the F-150 makes 325 horsepower with this air filter, even though it's smaller than these. So the point I'm making is, people think that by going with cold air intake, you're gonna get an increase in power. You're not. You're wasting your money, you're wasting your time. Then people say, well, Black, when you put the cold air intake, you can hear the engine sucking in air, so it's working harder. Bull crap. You ever heard, well, y'all probably hasn't heard your teacher say an empty wagon makes a lot of noise. Just because you're making a lot of noise don't mean you're doing something. Because again, let's go back to that Cadillac. It had an air filter. It made 125 horsepower. The two cars I just mentioned have air filters. You don't hear them sucking in air, but yet they makes quite a bit more power than that Cadillac. The F-150, you never hear it sucking in air. You don't even hear the damn turbos. I thought I heard somebody stomping the gas. My F-150, you don't even hear, if I never heard of F-150, but I knew about cars like I do now, but I never heard of F-150. I don't know anything about EcoBoost. If somebody gave me the F-150 and told me to drive it and then decide what the engine feels like, I would say it feels like a big V6. And that's what it feels like. You don't hear the turbo. You don't hear whoosh when you let off the gas. You don't hear anything. That's crazy. This air filter holds 325 horsepower. These two together, which is flowing more air, and they only hold 268. But there was a video I saw of somebody who had a Mercedes like mine, and they took these air filters off, took them off, and they put some damn aftermarket cone type air filters on the intake of the Mercedes. And I think to myself, they think they doing something. And I'm like, those two cone air filters probably flow less air than this air filter does. But, they don't know any better. But everybody believes that if they take off the stock air filter and put an aftermarket air filter, they're going to get an increase in power. This is not where the power comes from, okay? The F-150, you go by the base V6. Well, actually, I don't even think they sell a base V6 no more. The EcoBoost is the base V6. But before the EcoBoost, the base V6 was a 3.3, and it had 290 horsepower. The next engine up was the 2.7, 325 horsepower. The next engine up was the 5.0, and it was like 400 horsepower. The next engine up was the 3.5 EcoBoost. Now, I think it made less horsepower on the regular F-150. It made less horsepower, but it made a lot more torque than that 5.0. And now, if you go by, I don't know about the Expedition, they use the same, I have to check. I wouldn't be surprised if the Expedition uses the same air filter. And the Expedition is 380 horsepower? And then if you buy the Navigator, I think it's 450 horsepower, I think it is. I don't know, I have to check whether or not they use the same air filter, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did. This air filter is large enough to support 450 horsepower, believe it or not. But again, people think if they put an aftermarket air filter on their car, they will get more power. By the way, this air filter comes from a company called Per Filters. And I went on YouTube. Oh no, wait a minute. It says, oh no, this is Fram. Made in China. It's not Fram. I mean, it just mentioned the Fram part number, a Hastings part number, and a Purelator part number. but it's called PUR filters. I went on YouTube and no one talks about a PUR filters. So, oh, what I got them off eBay. It actually came with 2 air filters and a cabin filter. The cabin filter is downstairs. I didn't think it was relevant, but I got all 3. I don't remember. I might put it in the description in the video. I don't remember what I paid for them, but it wasn't a lot. It wasn't a lot at all. Now, is this filter as good as Fram? I don't care. The filters that are on that car, I've checked them and held them up to light. You can still see light. I'm going to change them, but I'm not in any kind of hurry to change them. I mean, they wasn't dirty. As a matter of fact, the F-150, that motherfucker is dirty. I checked it a few days ago, and it's got a little over, like 31,000 miles on the F-150. I mean, this sucker is dirty. But the thing is, it was a bright day. I went outside and I held this up. If you hold it up to the sun like this, look at the sun, put the sun on this side of the air filter and look through here. If you can see light, the filter is still good. Now, I'm not gonna say I'm gonna reuse it, but I'm just saying I looked it up and I can see light. So even though the filter's dirty as hell, it's still good. But I'm gonna change it. That's why I went to Walmart and got this. I think it was $17, $18, $19, something like that. I go to AutoZone before I go. I go to Walmart before I go to AutoZone. The filters are cheaper. The exact same filters. Well, if you get the Fram, be the exact same filters. I'm happy with Fram. Like I said, I would have liked to have bought a Fram for the Mercedes, but all they had was PUR. Drake, y'all have a good day.